everybody, welcome to Excel video 417. I'm Nate Moore. Talked with a group just yesterday that said, hey Nate, our compensation formula is really complicated. It takes a staff member over a week every month to figure out what each doctor's compensation ought to be based on all these parameters. Can you help us? The answer is sure. We can do a lot of things to automate and simplify, primarily in Excel for this project. And if I can do the same in your practice, I'd love to. When we worked with the macro recorder for several videos, you remember we got very concerned about where we started, and we wanted to make sure that we started the macro at exactly the right place so it would do the cells that we wanted to, whatever we were going to do to format or change or whatever. We were very careful where we started. Now that we're a little more familiar with VBA and what we're doing, we're going to talk about ranges. And we don't necessarily care where the macro starts because we can control what range we're working with, and all these different ways of defining ranges are what we're going to play with today. So what I have is a mostly blank spreadsheet with a couple of numbers here, and here's another sheet with nothing on it. So if we just start with sheet 1 and we come over to VBA, let me show you several different ways to identify a range. And a range is just a cell or group of cells that we want to work with. So to start with, what this line of code will do is it will take the cell, the A1. So our range is just the cell A1. We're going to change the interior, and one of the properties of the interior of that cell is a color index that will change the color to number 7. And we'll see what that looks like here in just a minute. Another way to define a range, besides range, left parenthesis, and the cell location in quotes, is to just simply put the cell location in brackets instead. You don't have to type range and the quotes and the parenthesis and all that. You just put E3 in brackets, and we'll change the color in E3 to this color 14 with this code. If you want to do a range of cells, instead of just E3, I want to do several of them, this range is M1 to N3. And so instead of just doing one cell in brackets, you can do a range of cells in brackets. And again, we're going to change the interior property, the color index, and change that to a different color. I can also use the word range like I did up here and put a range in quotes. B7 to D11 will change this range to this color. There's also a different way to do it besides using this range command. You can do cells, and the way cells work is one of two ways. It's rows and columns. I've got a little note out here, rows and columns. So this is row 10, column 2. The other thing I could do is row 10, column C. So this is essentially C10 is the cell we're looking at. Notice that this is C10, and the 10 goes first, and the C is in quotes. This is really B10. See how it's column 2, which is B, row and column, and you can use the cells command. You say, Nate, it's easier to do this, and it is. But cells can come in handy for us when we need to change where we are programmatically. When we need to write a code to loop through and do this to this cell, then go to the next cell, then go to the next cell. This cells command is going to come in handy. If you've named ranges, and we have an Excel video about this as well, you can reference the named range simply by putting it in quotes. So I've created a named range. Let me just show you over here for a minute. If we go over here to Formulas and Name Manager, I have a named range called Named Range. And it's, these cells that are G6 to I9, these numbers happen to be named range. I can, let's go to, this is plenty for one Excel video. We'll come back and talk about offset and some of these other things in the next Excel video. Let me show you how it works. So all these different commands are simply identifying an area on our spreadsheet and then saying, once you figure out what area you're going to work on, the interior of that range of cells, here's the color I want to go to. And just one more thing before we do the colors. Let's come here and here. There are 56 basic colors that color index property will do, and here's what they look like. So if you need one of the standard colors, you can use the color index property without using red, green, and blue. We'll get to red, green, and blue, we'll do that. But if you need some basic colors, there's 56 of them you can play with, and here's what they look like. So that color 7 is going to be this kind of magenta, kind of purplish color. That's what we're up to. So I'm going to come over here. It doesn't matter where I start. I'm just going to live here, come back to VBA, and we're going to run this thing. And when we do, and that didn't take very long, now you can see that all the different ranges that I identified, A1 here, and here's some ranges here, and you can see I identified a range, and then inside that range I changed some of the other cells to different colors. There's my named range. I made that green. I made some cells over here yellow, but I made that one light blue because I identified these cells, and when I did, I said change the color. And that's all I'm doing. That's all I want to do in this Excel video and the next one, and maybe the one after that as well, is just identify cells to work on. It's a critical part of writing code, especially once we move away from the macro recorder, to be able to quickly identify which cells we want to work with, and that's what we're going to do. So that's the game. Either range, the parenthesis and quotes, or the brackets, or the cells, or a named range. There's a bunch of different ways to identify cells to work on. Stay tuned in the next Excel video. What I want to do is move the range around a bit. I want to combine range and cells. And then this whole time we've been working off of one worksheet. What if I wanted to change stuff over here? And that's what I'll do in the next Excel video. Thanks for watching.